Hi Simon, I'd like to welcome you to DJ's Denim and Leather Show. How are you?
Fine, thank you, Darren. How are you?
I'm very good. I suppose my first question would be, what inspires you to sort of get into rock music and ultimately want to be in a band?
Yeah, there's a couple of things like in the 60s even, really. You know, being aware of Top of the Pops, collecting records, things like The Move, Small Faces. But there's a couple of points that would really, light bulb moments, as they say, would have been sort of Slade on Top of the Pops, along with the rest of the glam stuff, Sweet, Mud, Mott the Hoople, you name it, as well as, looking back, quite grown-up acts like, Roxy Music, Bowie. And then the radio was always on in the kitchen. And one Saturday afternoon, I heard Whole Lot of Love. And that had the same sort of appeal to me with the bass and drums, but I could just tell, it had that adult edge to it, it was a bit more grown up. And that was, for me then, I was absolutely sold. So, Sounds Magazine, John Peel, Bob Harris, The Whistle Test, if I could stay up that late, all that kind of stuff. And again, the glam rock thing, the drums were such a powerful sort of instrument. Susie Quattro, Cozy Powell, and after a brief stint trying to play the guitar, but finding I couldn't change chord quick enough, the drums were it for me. Yeah, so that would have been, around about 73, 74. And again, the rock thing expanded, like the Holy Trinity, obviously, Zeppelin, Sabbath and Purple, but also a lot of prog stuff as well, Rush, King Crimson, Tull. So trying to learn what they, but just by ear, I never had any lessons, just trying to learn, note for note off the record, if you like, what they were trying to achieve. Obviously the live music thing for me was a massive one. So going to see bands like Budgie in 74 was sort of a massive thing. But at the same time, not far away from where I am now was a little pub called the Troubadour, where I'd see Jameson Raid, Warts, Cryer, Handsome Beasts. But of course, this was 78. I wasn't quite old enough to go in, but I had an elder brother, so I got away with it, And this was pre the phrase NWO BHM, you see.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So what was your sort of earliest interaction in a sort of a band environment then? Yeah,
well, at school I had a couple of mates, one of which was Paul Rowe, who we shall come on to later, I'm sure. Yeah. And he had got an acoustic guitar, and I used to play old smash tins because they had a plastic top, and I could fill them with my dad's nails, him being a builder, and they would give me a different tone. And he just on acoustic, and it was basically old Quo riffs, at this point. Yeah. But when I got a drum kit, we did actually, do a couple of youth club gigs. We actually did a 12-hour fundraiser, which is kind of strange to look back at now, the fact that we had the gumption to sort of put that together. But it was great just to hear him play, I don't know, some old Ted Nugent riff or something. It was amazing, but I really wanted to move on a bit, and I answered an advert in the local Lichfield paper, where I met a great bunch of lads, Tony Jones, Ian Threlfall, John Fox, and Paul Tunnicliffe. At this point, Paul had answered his own ad in the Express and Star for Wolverhampton. Mm-hmm. That turned out to be Dave Brooks and Stephen Cartwright.
Right, okay.
And so he joined Steel at that point. At that point, I wanted to be the fastest metal band around, which, when you think about what was happening the other side of the world in California shortly afterwards, kind of ironic. And yeah, we were doing classic rock covers, you name it, Priest, UFO, Zeppelin, Sabbath, all the usual sort of stuff. And we graduated to a 5-piece with Paul singing.
Yeah.
Steele wanted a singer. I introduced him to Paul, and he was in, basically. So by this time, Paul and Paul are both in Steele. Yeah, they recorded 2 songs, Make or Break and Look Up at the Sky. Oh. And that's when they wanted me to join. It's kind of, they asked me to join. I was happy. At the time, I think it was possible that Ian and myself and Rob Tidd would do the Bashful Ali thing, but I think maybe, Steele sort of stepped in first and required my services. So this Make or Break, Look Up at the Sky demo ended up at Neat.
Right, okay, yeah.
The whole independent thing. I mean, how do we define it? I think, definitely punk had such a massive influence on this whole scene. The fact that not everybody was going to get signed to a major label, so they all decided to just get on with it and do it themselves. We were offered the deal to do a single. Well, not really a major sort of record contract as such, but at least they were going to put it out there with national distribution.
Yeah.
So this is obviously by this time this is 1981, and the bands, that I've just mentioned, Jameson Raid, Cryer, etc., were putting out their own independent singles, and so we trotted on up there and did. We were supposed to be Neat 13, but obviously Venom wanted Neat 13.
I could have come on to that. Yeah.
So we did. All systems go, and personally, I wonder whether we should have done Make or Break. Make or Break was a kind of medium-paced AC/DC sort of stomper, if you like.
Yeah.
But Dave Brooks, the lead guitar player, turned up with this Rock Out track, which I know is a favourite of yours, pretty much fully formed. You can tell he's written it because the lead solo is probably about a minute too long, isn't it, to be honest? But, it lent itself to that sort of glam rock beat that I was, talking about previously.
Yeah. And
those were the songs we decided to do with Keith Nichol was the guy behind the desk at the time.
So what was next for Steele then, Simon?
Well, the next big thing, this was 1981, don't forget the single, and Jeff Barton liked it.
Yeah.
I think he said All Systems Go was a priesty powder keg, and again he touched on the glam rock sort of rolling drums of Rock Out, and it was in the heavy metal charts, week after week, which was basically compiled from DJs. It wasn't based on sales, I can assure you of that.
Yeah.
So the next thing is February 1982, we get to do a couple of dates completely out of the blue with Iron Maiden.
Right, okay.
Now, I think the promoter, we managed to get ourselves a gig at the Lafayette in Wolverhampton, which was kind of a big deal. And I can only imagine that we were on the week after this proposed date at Wolverhampton Civic, and he thought if he could put on the poster, direct from Maiden support, he'd get a few more punters in.
Yeah.
But that was absolutely amazing, So 2 nights of the Beast on the Road, Bruce's first tour, and we did Wolverhampton and Hanley. Run to the Hills was just breaking, and I think as much as I love Diano and the first 2 albums, I think you could see they were one of those bands where world domination was possible at that point,
Yeah. Well, Steve Harris he got his focus on that, hadn't he, for sure, so that's what they were striving for, and that's what they achieved, to be fair to him.
Yeah,
so,
I think so. I mean, that holy trinity that I talk about, if there's one band who could possibly lay claim to join them, it's probably Maiden. Yeah. And so I mean, I think that brought us to the attention of some management. Now, management, I'm going to say in inverted commas, because they were completely inexperienced, but they had access to like a TV studio and video, and to be honest, if they bought us a couple of drinks and a curry, we were sort of happy with that. This got a bit heavy for Paul Tunnicliffe. He's at an age where he was recently married and the family and a new job, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And we got in touch with, or rather he contacted us, a guy called Rick Chase, who was from Lincoln.
Right.
And he was in a band called Excalibur. Excalibur as in a weapon, not the sword.
Yeah.
We did a couple of songs then at, do you remember Raymond Froggatt?
I've come across that Well, I do remember him as a recording artist. I think I got a couple of his LPs actually.
Yeah, the studio in Wednesbury anyway. And we did a couple of songs, at the studio, but also videos to go along them, which again was quite a big deal for us. Steph quit, the bass player. Possibly similar reasons, possibly the direction. It was kind of like, how serious are you? With this management coming along. And he was replaced by Tony McIlwain, who was in a Birmingham band called Misspent Youth. And he brought along some very different influences, possibly like a bit more of the glam sort of era at the time, sort of Bon Jovi, Rats, Motley Crue, that sort of thing. And just more and more demos. It was really hard to get a gig, but we did Chuckle Nobody's Fool. That was with John Lee's studio, the guy from Barclay James Harvest.
Yeah.
And we did manage to put together a tour with Magnum. That would have been February, March of '84.
Right.
Some of the gigs, there was like 3 bands on, so we're really looking forward to Birmingham Odeon. Obviously, we ended up being on before Shy, and I think Hanley we were on before Le Griff. I'm trying to think that we did 3 nights at the Marquee with Magnum, and the last night of that trio was when Phil Lynott did Grand Slam for the first time, because he got Kex to play with him from Magnum, Lawrence Archer, And so we got to see that for the first time, which was a bit of a thrill.
Yeah,
we got to meet him. I know those poses, is what he said to me. So as if the guitar players had sort of stolen his stage act. And again, more demos, Killer Streak. That was quite heavy again, because by this time we were sort of veering off into a sort of an image-based band, which wasn't sitting well with me at all. But it was always this, well, if you change a little bit, you might be able to get this deal. I believe a deal was on the table through Bronze, but, it was like, well, if you just did this or this. The last song I remember recording was a song called I Believe in Rock and Roll, which was a great, again, a bit of we keep coming back to this glam rock stomping thing. It was a bit like that, But by then, that was the end of it, really, for me, anyway, for me and Paul, because, they wanted to spend far too much time to try and please people, into creating this monster that was never going to happen, with regard to being like the next Bon Jovi, which is always a mistake, because you're never going to second guess what's coming next. And what came next was guys in black T-shirts playing fast metal.
Well, yeah.
Influenced by all us lot, apparently. I remember I'm still in touch with Alan from Plastic Factory Records. When I met him in Stafford, I was buying such as Leopard, the Bludgeon Refoal, Tigers of Pantang EP, and he still, remembers sitting there with Lars and with all these records in front of him, deciding which ones he could afford to take back to America and play to his mate James Hetfield, I guess, by that point.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you're spot on what you're saying. Is what you guys were doing. They took it over there, and massively influenced.
And again, we talk. There's probably not a lot of money to worry about. But if Lars could get his head around the intro to All Systems Go, then it might be a different story. Then we might need to talk. Again, to record that on Garage Days too.
Absolutely. So, Simon, what will be the first track we ever listen to then?
Right, so this is All Systems Go. As you know, it was a double A side with Rock Out, the ones that we recorded for Neat up in Newcastle. And although we seemed to spend all day doing Rock Out, All Systems Go was a very much a one take sort of thing, and possibly all the better for it. I don't know. See what you think.
How much steel material would you say is on cassettes, demos, etc.?
Right. Well, when Paul Rowe joined, which is probably 1980, he was presented with this demo, Desolator and Taurus. Now, that they speak for themselves. It was like heavy, but fast too. Then there was this Make or Break when Paul Tunnicliffe joined. There's Make or Break, Look Up to the Sky, which brought us to the attention of Dave Wood. Obviously, there's 2 tracks for Neat. There wasn't a 3rd track, by the way. It was just those 2. We spent ages doing Rock Out, and then we went back in and did All Systems Go in 1 take. I make a mistake on it, but don't tell anybody.
No, I'll keep it quiet if you can. Everybody knows now, but I'll keep it quiet.
And then the ones we've sort of mentioned are the ones that spring to mind. But yeah, what have I said already? There's probably 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, there's probably a good dozen. Now, I would love to, hear a live set of Steel in, say, 1982. There's a particular place we used to love playing, the Moonraker up in Cannock, again, not far from where I'm sat now. If there was a bootleg of that would be great. But these songs, obviously, by the nature of a track that you're demoing, you want it to be more commercial than needs be, if you see what I mean, because you're trying to attract somebody who's going to sell the product. But so what we're left with, unfortunately, are some of the stuff, I'm sure would sound great and it'd be good to get it out there. But I was going to say, no, it's just amazing that's, when we talk about the possibility of reissuing these old cassettes and things, that there is still that interest in the genre and that sort of independent metal from, shall we say, I don't know, 79 to 81, 82 possibly.
Yeah, absolutely. No, there's massive interest,
Diamond Head, obviously, who never went too far away.
Yeah.
Brilliant stuff.
So, 1984, you get an invite to join Darkstar. Is that correct?
Exactly. During the 84 Magnum tour, Dave Harrison, as he was known at that point, was roadieing basically for Tony Clarkin on guitar. So we'd obviously met each other, and it's not like we were big pals or anything, but through a studio that we both use in Wolverhampton, Switch, he invited me down to do a recording, which I did, and turned up and set up, and there was just me and Dave, and one by one, Darkstar turned up. So it's false pretenses, really, Darren, there, because one by one they turned up and they sort of said, well, is he joining or what? Because I was thinking, how's this recording going to work if there's no mics dotted about?
Yeah.
But I agreed to do a couple of songs, which was Going Nowhere, of which more later, and Rock and Roll Nights, not to be confused with Rock and Roll Heroes, which I particularly like. I think you might hear that one later.
Yeah.
I did end up joining them, which was great. Mark Stanways from Magnum, he had a brother Guy. He had a studio in Wednesbury. Right. And I remember doing another 4 tracks there. Spy Zone was one of them. And having spoken to you, I dug up the album the other day and I was pleasantly surprised with it. It's probably a little bit ambitious production-wise, and maybe the keyboard introduction might not please all the metal fans, all the Captain America fans, but I think it holds well together.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. Definitely.
Yeah, so we're demoing, did a few gigs with Robin George, who was, sort of launching his solo career at the time. That would have been 85, I think. Yeah. And then I think we got to a position where the album was sort of almost, we'd have approached or been approached by FM Revolver, heavy metal basically, to sort of put the album out. And I was surprised to see as well that was as late as 87. I thought it was a bit earlier than that. But so we'd gone back to Stanways, and, finished off the 10 tracks. I'm on 8 of them. There's the previous drummer, Steve Atkins, would have been on 2. And I remember looking at being a bit miffed that I didn't get my picture on the back. Being a fully fledged member now, I thought, well, that's no good, I want my picture on there.
Yeah, well, yeah, it would have been.
And also, one of the things that I do want to dig up a new version of Lady of Mars, which we recorded. I slightly changed the drums, which is probably sacrilege to some people. But I think the idea was we didn't include it on the album, whether it was meant to be a re-release single or an extra track or whatever, but it never saw the light of day, basically. But I think it's good.
Well, I'll be very interested to hear that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and wouldn't it be great if we could get back together and do one of these festivals? But we'll have to see.
It certainly would. So we're going to have a listen to our second piece of music in, Simon. Can you tell me a little bit about what it is, please?
This will be Going Nowhere, which is the first song I recorded with Dark Star. They sort of got me down under the false pretenses in a way, but I was happy to do some demos for them. And it was re-recorded for what turned out to be the second full album, Reel to Reel. So at the same time as Dark Star, I put together the Strand. This is probably around 85, so we're probably getting a little bit late for the the core of the movement. But this was Paul Rowe and Paul Tunnicliffe who'd quit Steel, back to my old mate John Fox, and we'd found this guitar wizard, Andy Cartwright. And we did a lot of demos, but it was so hard to get a gig, that there's not a lot we could do. But again, I thought those would be of interest to people as a kind of a footnote to the old to the movement.
Have you got? Is there quite a bit of material by them on cassettes and?
Yeah, there's a guy called Rod Beale, again, a local Lichfield lad at the time. He ended up working at Real World for Peter Gabriel. I mean, he knew his stuff, so he did some sort of home recordings for us, which are pretty good. And then we did another two songs, again, back to this place in Wolverhampton. Again, they need digging out, and it's up to, whether I kind of try and remaster them somehow to make the best audio for MP3s or, just do it. I don't know. Have to invest.
Well, it's
some money I ain't got.
One question I did want to ask you: am I correct that you actually sort of deal in records, collecting and buying and selling and new wave of British heavy metal records, etc.?
Yes, I mean, all my life, really. I mean, going back to the 60s, which I touched on earlier on, it's always been a massive thing for me to collect. But I've always made, played music on a semi-pro level. And so to keep that, going, I set up a business in around about 87, buying and selling records. So obviously I'd got a head start with regards to rock, hard rock, and what turned out to be the NWO BHM already. And it was probably, this was record fairs, mail order through Record Collector magazine. And I remember, I'm not absolutely sure, but I think it could have been around about 1990, 91. I was at this record fair and somebody picked out the Steel single for £1. And he showed me the list of the records that he was after. And it wasn't until that point, really, that the penny dropped, that people were actually looking out for these records, and the values were starting to make sense. And some of the records are just, going up and up in price, which is, again, great. And it's great to know that, hand in hand with the live sort of scene, the record collecting side of it is, it shows strong potential as well.
And is it like an eBay shop that you've got, or?
Yeah, well, I'm just Simon's Records on eBay, but I should warn you that if you look, you'll find Shirley Bassey and Neil Diamond. Ooh. It's, it's not like solely metal rock and NWO BHM, but you will see things there. And it's great to talk to people. I can give them some personal background on particular records. Saxon, Leopard and Maiden are up there, but they might be thinking to themselves, or perhaps there was a gem of a single there that didn't quite make it, and of the time. There's some good stuff before, good stuff after, but as we said, the classic, it's got to be 79 to 81, 82, I reckon. Okay,
we're going to have a listen to our final piece of music then, Simon. What will we be listening to?
This is Rock and Roll Heroes, which, thanks to you, I rediscovered, having dug up my vinyl copy of Reel to Reel. And I think we both were sort of fairly impressed that I think it hangs together quite well as an album. It's possibly a little bit more keyboard heavy than some people would like, and maybe a bit ambitious considering the time we had with regards to production. But just on a quick listen, I thought this track was a good representation of where the band was at the time.
Just
So then, Simon, I believe that you're still actively drumming. Are you actually playing in a band at the moment?
Yeah, well, at the end of the 90s, so end of the 80s rather, 1989, I took a left turn into the more indie rock stuff. I got a call from a guy, Neil Cook, in the Wildflowers. We ended up in California for 3 months recording with Matt Wallace, who people might know from producing Faith No More. But yeah, still playing to this day. My current thing is a Roxy music tribute act. This might be a long way from people's expectations of the old NWOBHM days, but still good to keep out there. And as I say, I keep in touch with going to see such as Saxon Quartz, Angel Witch, and these reunion festivals. I hope to see you there one of the days.
Oh, I'm sure you absolutely will. Absolutely. So I suppose a big question, if there was a chance then of maybe a show with Dark Star or Steel again, then you wouldn't rule that out then, basically?
Certainly, yeah. I mean, unfortunately, I've lost track with Steel altogether. But, you know, Dark Star, I remember them as being, you know, a good bunch of guys, obviously with Lady of Mars, that had such an impact, still has to this day, on the whole scene. Having been to some of these reunion gigs, I think they would work really well. I've tried to get in touch with Rick, but I'm not really on the Facebook thing. So, you know, maybe he'll hear this and get Bob and Dave back on the scene, and we'll go for it. Yeah, why not? Good people, and I'd be happy to sort of to try and do this with them, definitely. And
yes, yeah. Well, Simon, I'd like to thank you for joining me on DJ's Denim and Leather, and I'd like to wish you all the best for the future.
You're welcome. Thanks for inviting me, and yeah, we'll have a pint sometime, shall we? Talk about
yeah, we will.
The old days.
We will.